Now available on Lulu. John Haynes at Death's Door. The man who rules the world takes on the Greek god of death in this action-packed, all-new John Haynes comic book. Get your copy of the first John Haynes comic at lulu.com today. Now available in paperback and e-readers, John Haynes, Illuminati. The man who rules the world takes on the head of the global elite in this all-new action-packed John Haynes series adventure. Get your copy of John Haynes Illuminati in paperback and e-readers at Amazon.com and online booksellers everywhere. In a previous video, I talked about the tragic case of Jordan Neely, the mentally ill black man who sadly lost his life at the hands of a white male Marine, Daniel Penny. And while many people were caught up in the controversy of the case, what they really don't want to talk about is the mental health issues that many black men wind up going through here in America. Now, when it comes to most heterosexual black men, we basically wind up suffering in silence due to mental health issues, and a lot of those mental health issues basically are compounded by living in this system of white supremacy. And as many heterosexual black men live in this system of white supremacy, they wind up in a place where their whole mental health deteriorates as they're trying to find a way to survive in a whole society that does not want them in that society or participating in that society at all. Now, when it comes to the system of white supremacy, the system of white supremacy wants to see black men, especially heterosexual black men, at the bottom of the world. And in order to make their world smooth, they need to see black men struggling in poverty and struggling in poverty to the point where they basically are scraping by to just get their daily bread. And this is what leads to many black men having mental health issues because as they try to find a way to make a living in this white supremacist system, they find themselves unable to be able to enter the job market and be able to not only get a job, but be able to continue to secure that job in order to build a life for themselves in this society. And this is basically what lays the foundation for a lot of the homeless population in cities like here in New York City, because a majority of the homeless population is black, and a majority of that homeless population are heterosexual black men. And I believe that the reason why we have so many heterosexual black men as part of the homeless population is due to the willful and intentional discrimination that continues to go on in the job market that prevents many heterosexual black men from being able to access full-time employment. And since they cannot access full-time employment, what happens to many black men is that their mental health starts to deteriorate, and it starts to deteriorate because they cannot find a way to survive in this world. And since they can't find a way to survive in this world, what happens to many heterosexual black men is as their finances and savings start to go down, what these men start to do is they start to become desperate, and as their whole lives wind up falling completely apart, what happens is those men wind up on the streets, and as they wind up on the streets, they basically have to deal with their mental health deteriorating because they're dealing with anxiety. And as they're dealing with this anxiety as related to trying to find a way to make a living and try to find a way to basically try to find a way to live in this society, what happens is these men wind up on the streets, and as they wind up on the streets, this is where they start to possibly start escaping through drugs and alcohol because again, when you're anxious all the time, basically what you do is you try to escape through drugs and alcohol in order to deal with the fact that you're living in a world that, one, completely rejects you because of the color of your skin, two, won't look to support you in any way, shape, or form whatsoever, and three, won't even try to lift a finger to help you at all in any way, shape, or form. I believe that this is the core reason why many heterosexual black men wind up having mental health problems is due to the anti-black racism that goes on mainly in the job market, because as these men enter the job market they try to find a way to make that living. Unfortunately, what they run into is what I have run into ever since I was 18 years old, which is basically just constant resistance from many people and as related to employment. I mean, I remember being 18 years old going to temp agencies and basically these people winding up blowing me completely off, talking about how I didn't have any experience. Meanwhile, they'll go get some white or non-black person who has no experience and say this is the perfect job for them to start learning, and will go out here and open a door for that person, but won't open that same door for that black person. And even if they go back and come back with college degrees, I remember going to the same temp agencies with a college degree in the 90s and being completely ignored by these temp agencies, even cutting my hair down to a Caesar, hoping this would basically get these people's attention. And again, they didn't want to go out here and help a black man because a lot of these people go out here and buy into stereotypes that white supremacy has created regarding black men as related to the ideas that they have created, because in their world, when it comes to black men, they consider heterosexual black men to be lazy based on the narratives of caricatures that white supremacy has created, or they believe that we're going to be lustful brutes who want to go out here and lust after white women, or they believe that we're not competent at all. Again, these are things that are projected onto black men as related to when we go out here looking for jobs. And as we go out here looking for jobs, we basically are met with resistance and in some cases extreme hostility. And all we want to do is go out here and make a living. All we want to do is go out here and make a living and try to find a way to, again, be able to take care of ourselves and be men. But what we run into is people who don't want us to go out here and take on the responsibilities of men because they basically have no respect for us as men. And this really impacts a black man's mental health, because when he goes out here and he's told, oh, he's got a fair shot based on merit, he's told he's got a fair shot based on his skills, and if he goes out here and puts in the work, people will look to hire him. But what happens to many black men is that they are sitting there still trying to figure out what they're doing wrong, when the only thing I can surmise that that person did wrong was just being born being black. And because they were born being black and being born a black man, many of these employers basically have bought into a lot of stereotypes, and as they've bought into those stereotypes, they basically believe this person's not going to be a good worker based on the ideas that they have been taught by the system of white supremacy. And this leaves many black men basically scratching their heads as related to trying to figure out a way to be able to get themselves a job in this job market. And as they try different approaches, they find themselves running into the same brick wall, a brick wall that basically is designed to deny them access to the job market and deny us access to a job market. Meanwhile, what's really sad is we watch as our black women are able to get the same jobs with a high school diploma or even less. And even worse than that, we watch as people who enter the country illegally are allowed to go out here and get that same job and are offered tangible money for that job. Meanwhile, when it comes to the heterosexual black man, what they want to do is talk about, well, we want to have you volunteer or work for free. Again, the ultimate disrespect to the heterosexual black man as related to his labor. Everyone else is told that their labor has a value as related to money, but the black man's value labor is told that they have to see what the value of it is, and that's the stuff that really impacts the mind of heterosexual black men as related to our mental health. And as black men are trying to figure out a way to make a living in this white supremacist society, this is what leads to many black men's mental health winding up deteriorating, because as they become more and more anxious about how they're going to survive in this world if they can't get hired, this is where, again, it leads to that man's mind falling completely apart due to the constant stress, due to the constant anxiety that man has as related to his whole life being destabilized, his whole life winding up being completely destabilized, and as he's trying to find a way to again make that living where it's nigh impossible to even get any sort of interview or any sort of phone call or even get a call back. This is where this man starts to go from becoming anxious to panicking, and he goes from anxious to panicking because he's trying to find a way to go out here and be able to make that living. That's what I believe stresses out a lot of black men who have these mental health issues. They wind up in this situation because they wind up not being able to get that job. And I believe that's one of the reasons why so many black men have wound up with mental health issues, and quite a few have wound up in becoming homeless, is because they wind up in a situation where they have to go, once they're trying to find jobs, one. Two, they're winding up going out here, and if they do get that job, what they do is run into an environment where basically everybody wants to get that black man out of that job, whether it be the white people and non-black people in management to the black women who work there. They basically want to get that black man out because they have bought into a lot of stereotypes when it comes to many of these folks. Oh, the black man is lazy. The black man doesn't want to do anything. Again, constantly scrutinizing everything that you are doing on the job at a microscopic level and micromanaging you. Or you've got black women who basically are upset that they are projecting all of their anger and frustrations as related to the pookie boyfriends or the ex-husbands or the baby daddies that they have on you. Or you've got some white folks who basically are just caught up in their racism and can't stand the idea of a black man's presence. And again, as that black man is dealing with that pressure of that hostile work environment, they basically are trying to push that black man out just as he's trying to get his life together. And as that black man is trying to get his life together, then he's wind up struggling again because he's in an environment where he's not welcome. And I believe this all has an impact on a black man's mental health. I believe it has an impact on a black man's mental health because that black man is not in an environment where he's supported. He's not in an environment where he has any sort of anybody caring about him. And again, this basically leads to that black man, after he possibly winds up losing that job, again, winding up going to the point where his mental health starts to deteriorate, and starts to deteriorate because as he's trying to, again, find that next job, he winds up in a situation where his whole life falls completely apart. And that's what I'm thinking about as related to a lot of black men who have mental health issues. A lot of them have mental health issues due to their economic situation, an economic situation that is created by people who willfully and intentionally participate in open discrimination and basically look to cover it up with their female-run HR brick walls and their white knights who want to, again, cover it all up and say, oh, we're not discriminating against black men, when in actuality, when you see who's hired, in most cases, they go out here and hire black women and minorities to cover it up. But meanwhile, these black men are out here looking for work, trying to go out here and make that living, but you just run into resistance. And again, as you run into this resistance for years at a time, the pressure starts to get to that black man. And as it starts to get to that black man, this is what leads to many black men winding up cracking and winding up on the streets because they were basically never given that chance to be able to make that living. And many of these white supremacists, the only black men they want to see on the job are men who are begging and groveling for their daily bread. And they look to deny that black man his dignity, they look to deny that black man his right to be respected, and deny him a right to make a living. And what's even worse is that you've got black women and non-blacks programmed to believe it's okay to deny that black man a right to make a living, deny that black man a right to be able to go out here and be able to go out here and build a life for himself, because in their eyes the black man doesn't deserve that at all. No, they demonize the black man and have nothing but contempt for that black man and walk right by that black man who could have basically been somebody who could have been contributing to your society. And again, they don't value that black man as related to paying taxes. They don't value that black man as related to him building anything or contributing to society, because they value an illegal who enters the country illegal more, because you offer the illegal money. When the illegal comes to work for white folks and non-black folks off the books, at least they are offered the tangible of money. But when it comes to the foundational black American man, especially if he's heterosexual, he's the one they don't value as a human being, and they don't value his life at all. No, they don't value his life at all. And because they don't value his life at all, they are willing to let him fall through the cracks, and let him fall through the cracks until he dies. That's the sad case of Western society, especially American society, as related to heterosexual black men. They would rather let that mentally ill black man fall through the cracks to the point where he dies a John Doe and winds up buried in Potter's Field. They don't even want that black man to have the respect of being able to even have a tombstone as related to his to showing he even existed. That's the whole cruel thing about this country as related to black men. And when it comes to the mental health of black men, they don't regard the mental health of black men who basically are struggling as related to their mental health. And I believe a lot of it has to do with a lot of black men not being able to get and keep these jobs because of the hostility and anti-black racism that we have to deal with in this society. And this is why so many black men fall through the cracks, because many of these black men, I guess if they were on the street and you started talking to those black men, you would start to hear that many of these black men made every effort to try to get their lives in order. But what they run into is this whole resistance by society, because these white supremacists don't want to see a black man have any sort of power whatsoever, and they don't want to see a black man have any sort of power whatsoever, to the point where they basically want to take away every ability of him to be even able to, again, make a basic living, and don't want to even give him the intangibles of his respect. And that can, again, affect a black man's mind. It can affect a black man's mind to the point where he feels so dehumanized, to the point where he basically, his mind falls completely apart, because he has seen no one ever seeing his humanity, no one ever seeing him as a soul that deserves any sort of respect. And that's the sad part, because many black folks themselves are programmed not to see the humanity of other black people, especially other black men, and so dehumanized to not see the humanity of another black man, that we basically, again, can walk by another black man and not look to, again, make that offer of a job, or that could basically transform a man's life and keep him from falling through the cracks onto the streets. That's the saddest part about things. We don't really see the humanity of black men in this society. We don't see the humanity of black men, because the time to help that black man is when that guy is about 17, 18 years old, about to get that first job. That's when you could help a black person, and that's when you could really do something for them to help them get their life started. But sadly, there's no support systems, and that what happens to a lot of black boys as they become black men is they fall through these cracks and they wind up getting lost. And as they're trying to figure out life, they start getting the frustrations overwhelm them, and the frustrations turn to the anxieties. And as they turn into the anxieties, this is where people's minds start to fall apart, and they start to panic. And as they start to panic, they just the whole physical and mental health starts to completely collapse. That's what happens to most black men out here as related to being on these streets. And nobody wants to talk about that because you got black women who are made to feel comfortable as they continue to install bricks in the HR brick wall to keep black men out of the job market. You've got the white supremacists who hire non-blacks and put them in power positions, and they use their power to create a buffer, and all of them keep black men out of the job market. And again, this keeps black men at the bottom of the world. And as those black men are at the bottom of the world, again, no support at all. And I believe that this has a major impact on the mental health of black men, has a major impact on the mental health of black men, and leads to black men winding up on the streets, winding up looking to escape through alcohol, escape through drugs, and basically are in a place where they can, again, are not given any sort of care whatsoever, and nobody cares about those black men. And I just really saddens me because I mean, this is just cruel what's done to black men in this country. And again, people will look at a guy like a Jordan Neely, but I look at the bigger picture as related to guys like Jordan Neely. And what we do is we don't help those guys when they're young. We don't really give them any sort of support. We don't give them any sort of job. We don't give them any sort of male life skills or male survival skills. And then when they start, again, winding up on the street, they have the mental health issues, and we basically just leave them to die. And again, that's just the way things are as related to this system of white supremacy. Nobody wants to give the black man a job, but they'll go out here and ask him to volunteer and work for free, which is one of the most racist things I have ever heard. You can ask a person who, again, enters the country illegally to work off the books. You'll give him cash money, but you won't give that black man a job and pay him wages or pay him to the point where he can qualify for unemployment. And when he does get the job, you want to go out here and fire him. You want or plan to get him to quit his job. You'll do all of these, again, tactics to, again, deny that black man his right to a living, but you'll go out here and, again, go out here and emasculate the black man by hiring the black woman instead of him, and then go out here and, again, hire a foreigner who is not even a citizen, deny that black man his right to employment. And again, I believe a lot of the mental health issues a lot of black men have is due to the anxieties that they have as related to their employment, because their employment is just as unstable as it was during the days of Jim Crow. It's just as unstable as the days of Jim Crow, where a white man could get upset that he couldn't get his bagel from the deli, and he took it out by firing the black man, or the white secretary was checking out the black man, and this white guy got insecure, and he looked to fire the black man. So the black man's employment was in a bad place. And even worse is that the black man, as his employment has become unstable as related to white companies, it's become more unstable because we don't have those black-owned businesses, and even black-owned businesses can't get support from black people because we got spellbound black folks who are just so caught up in supporting white products and white acceptance. We don't have that institution to take care of our own people. This is why reparations is so important, because so many black men have been denied their ability to make a living due to the current and ongoing open discrimination that continues to go on. Even as affirmative action was in place, there's still current and ongoing discrimination with these feminist-run HR brick walls and these diversity quotas where they look to hire everybody but the black men who are supposed to benefit from affirmative action. I mean, I look at the case of Jordan Neely and I see where a lot of black men's mental health is, because a lot of black men are just, again, we wind up so scared as related to making a living that we basically are in a place where our mental health starts to deteriorate because we can't see a way to get a break even in a great economy, because many of these businesses, again, don't want to hire black men. I mean, they don't want to hire black men until they basically hire all the illegals and every other minority. And they keep black people at the bottom, especially black men. And again, this is what leads to, again, I believe a lot of the mental health issues a lot of black men have is because they can't get that support. And since we can't get that support, that's why many black men basically, again, wind up having mental health issues, and those mental health issues get progressively worse as they wind up getting laid off, as they wind up getting fired, because it becomes just that much harder. Even though you've got an education and experience, it still is hard for that black man to get jobs. And this is something people don't want to talk about as related to the workplace, because you can go out here and have a stellar record as a black man and nobody wants to hire you even to work at McDonald's. This is what I've run into. I mean, they don't even want to hire you at McDonald's because they just don't like the idea of a black man having power of any sort of ability over anything. They don't want to see a black man having any sort of power. And that's the most frustrating thing about America, is that you don't want to see any black person having any sort of power whatsoever, and you deny that black person any sort of opportunity unless there's some sort of bootlick or shill in a lot of cases. And you only want to see you don't want to see a black person again have even power or agency over themselves. And this is what makes living in America, again, a place where black men's mental health deteriorates to the point where it falls completely apart, because as you're sitting there waiting for that phone call to come that never comes, that makes an offer, or you're dealing with people who are just, again, acting funny and hesitant, it just is really frustrating. And again, many people don't know what is going on in the minds of black men as related to unemployment, as related to dealing with their struggles, and nobody really wants to care about the issues of black men as related to things. No, they look at a case like a Jordan Neely and go, oh, that guy was mentally ill, but they don't want to see what really made a lot of folks that you're seeing on the trains who are black mentally ill, is that they are having to deal with long-term issues as related to dealing with the system of white supremacy and their inability to be able to get opportunities to make that living, to achieve that American dream. Now, if you want to help me out, you can pick up some of my books on the SJS Direct imprint, and you can also help out by dropping a donation to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, Isis, Dark Incubus. The goddess next door gets enthralled in a romantic entanglement with an evil incubus in this all-new Isis series adventure. Get your copy of Isis, Dark Incubus in paperback and e-readers today. Now available in paperback and e-readers, Esteem, Horror in the Hamptons. The aspiring angel tries to escape a house of horrors in this action-packed, all-new Esteem series adventure. Get your copy of Esteem, Horror in the Hamptons in paperback and e-readers at online booksellers everywhere. Support black-owned and black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.